The thunder of hooves on hard-packed earth sent Eleanor Vincent scrambling behind the water barrel, her heart hammering so violently she thought it might burst through her ribs. The stage had only just deposited her in Chisum Ranch, New Mexico territory, mere minutes ago, and already the sounds of this untamed place were threatening to undo her completely. She pressed trembling hands against her ears as a group of cowboys rode past whooping and hollering, their celebration of payday echoing off the weathered buildings lining the dusty Main Street. The year was 1878, and Eleanor had traveled all the way from Boston to become the bride of a rancher she had never met, a man who had promised her safety and security in his letters. Now, crouched behind a barrel like a frightened rabbit, she wondered if she had made the gravest mistake of her 22 years. When the noise finally subsided, Eleanor slowly emerged from her hiding place, smoothing down her travel-worn skirts with shaking hands. Her carpetbag sat where she had dropped it in the street, and she hurried to retrieve it before the dust could settle too thickly on her few precious belongings. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, so different from the mild summers she had known back east. "Miss Vincent." A voice spoke behind her, and despite its gentleness, Eleanor jumped and spun around, dropping her bag once more. The man standing there immediately took 2 steps backward, raising his hands slowly in a gesture of peace. He was tall and lean, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. His eyes were a striking blue-green, like the ocean on a calm day, and they regarded her with concern rather than the irritation she might have expected at her skittish behavior. "I am sorry," he said, his voice barely above a murmur. "I did not mean to startle you. My name is Nathan Oakes. I am the ranch foreman at the 00 Ranch. Samuel Garrett asked me to meet you here. He was detained by a matter with some cattle." Eleanor's chest tightened. Samuel Garrett was the man she had come to marry, the rancher who had placed an advertisement seeking a wife and who had exchanged letters with her for the past 6 months. She had imagined this moment differently, had pictured him greeting her himself, not sending an employee in his stead. "I see," she managed, her voice thin and ready. She hated how weak she sounded, how every fear seemed to telegraph itself through her words and movements. Nathan Oakes studied her for a long moment, and she saw understanding dawn in his eyes. He crouched slowly, gathering her carpetbag from the dirt, then stood with careful, measured movements. "The wagon is just there," he said softly, gesturing with his chin rather than pointing. "If you would like to follow me, we can load your trunk and head out to the ranch." "It is about an hour's ride." Eleanor nodded, not trusting her voice. She noticed how he kept his distance as he walked, how his boots made soft sounds in the dirt rather than the sharp, aggressive stomps she had heard from the other men. Even his spurs barely jingled, as though he had learned to move through the world with deliberate quietness. The wagon was a simple buckboard, but it looked sturdy and well-maintained. A pair of docile-looking horses stood in the traces, swishing their tails lazily at flies. Nathan loaded her trunk with easy strength, his movements fluid and unhurried. Then he moved to help her up onto the seat, but stopped when she flinched away from his outstretched hand. "Would you prefer to climb up yourself?" he asked, his tone neutral and kind. "The step is just there on the side." "Thank you," Eleanor whispered, grateful beyond words for his understanding. She managed to climb onto the seat, though her legs trembled beneath her heavy skirts. Nathan walked around the wagon slowly, giving her time to settle before he climbed up on the other side. He gathered the reins with gentle hands and clicked his tongue softly to the horses. The wagon lurched into motion, and Eleanor gripped the edge of the seat to steady herself. They rode in silence for several minutes, leaving the small collection of buildings that constituted Chisum Ranch behind them. The landscape stretched out endlessly in all directions, scrubland dotted with juniper and piñon pine, the mountains rising purple and distant on the horizon. Eleanor had never seen so much open space, so much sky. It was simultaneously beautiful and terrifying. The stage ride was long, Nathan finally asked, his voice pitched low enough that it blended with the creak of the wagon wheels and the soft clop of hooves. 3 weeks, Eleanor replied, then added, and 2 days. That is a considerable journey. You came from Boston, Samuel said. Yes. Nathan was quiet again, and Eleanor found herself grateful for his lack of pressure to fill the silence with meaningless chatter. She studied him from the corner of her eye, noting the way he held the reins with relaxed confidence, how his shoulders had a natural ease to them despite their breadth. He wore typical cowboy attire, dusty denim trousers, a faded blue shirt, a leather vest worn smooth with age. His hat was pushed back slightly on his head, revealing his tanned forehead and the beginnings of sun-bleached streaks in his dark hair. There is a canteen of water at your feet, Nathan said after a while, if you are thirsty. Eleanor realized her throat was parched, but she hesitated. The canteen was near Nathan's boot, and reaching for it would require her to lean closer to him. He seemed to sense her dilemma. Without a word, he slowed the horses to a near stop, then bent slowly and retrieved the canteen himself. He held it out to her at arm's length, making no move to bring it any closer than necessary. "Thank you," Eleanor said, taking it quickly and unscrewing the cap with trembling fingers. The water was warm but clean, and she drank gratefully. "We will stop soon to rest the horses," Nathan said, returning his attention to the road ahead. "There is shade about half a mile on and a creek. If you need to stretch your legs or refresh yourself, you will have the opportunity." True to his word, Nathan guided the wagon off the main track a short while later, bringing them to a stop beneath a stand of cottonwood trees. A narrow creek burbled over smooth stones, and the dappled shade felt blessedly cool after the relentless sun. Nathan climbed down from the wagon with the same careful, quiet movements, then walked to the horses' heads to check their harnesses. He did not offer to help Eleanor down, seeming to understand that she needed space. She managed to climb down on her own, though her legs were stiff from sitting and nearly buckled beneath her. "There are bushes beyond those rocks if you need privacy," Nathan said without looking at her, his attention apparently focused on the horses. "I will water the team and check the wheels." Eleanor nodded and made her way to the indicated spot, grateful for his tact and discretion. When she returned, she found Nathan sitting on a large rock near the creek, his hat beside him, his face tilted up to catch the breeze filtering through the cottonwood leaves. He had laid out a cloth on a flat stone, and on it rested some bread, cheese, and dried apple slices. "I thought you might be hungry," he said, still in that same soft voice. "It is simple fare, but it is fresh." Eleanor realized she was famished. She had been too nervous to eat much during her journey, and the last proper meal she had consumed was in Santa Fe 2 days prior. She sat down on a rock at a comfortable distance from Nathan and accepted the portion he had set aside for her. They ate in companionable silence, and Eleanor found herself slowly beginning to relax. The setting was peaceful, the sound of the creek soothing rather than jarring. Nathan made no sudden movements, asked no prying questions, seemed content to simply exist in the moment without demanding anything from her. "May I ask you something?" Eleanor ventured after a while, surprising herself with her boldness. "Of course," Nathan replied, turning his head slightly toward her but keeping his gaze lowered respectfully. "Why are you so different from the other men I have encountered here?" Nathan was quiet for a long moment, and Eleanor worried she had offended him. But when he spoke, his voice held no anger, only a thoughtful consideration. "My mother was Shoshone," he said simply. "She taught me that strength is not always loud, that power does not require aggression. She left her people to marry my father, a trapper who had settled in Wyoming territory. He loved her deeply and learned her ways as much as she learned his." He paused, picking up a small stone and turning it over in his fingers. "She died when I was 16. A fever took her one winter, but her lessons stayed with me." "I am sorry for your loss," Eleanor said softly, and meant it. Nathan nodded his acknowledgement. "And you carry yourself like someone who has known fear." It was not a question, and Eleanor appreciated that he did not demand an explanation. But something about his quiet presence, his obvious respect for her boundaries, made her want to share what she had never spoken aloud to anyone. "My father," she began, then stopped, swallowing hard. "My father was not a kind man. He was a merchant in Boston, well respected in the community, but at home he was different. When he drank, which was often, he became angry, violent." Nathan's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, simply listened. "My mother died when I was 17. After that, it was just him and me. I learned to move quietly, to anticipate his moods, to make myself small and unnoticeable." The words tumbled out now, 5 years of silence breaking like a dam. "When he died last year, I thought I would feel relief. Instead, I found I could not shake the habits he had instilled in me. Every loud noise, every sudden movement, sends me right back to those years." "That is why you answered Samuel's advertisement," Nathan said, understanding coloring his tone. "I thought if I could get far enough away, start over completely, perhaps I could leave those memories behind." Mr. Garrett's letters were kind. He seemed like a decent man. "Samuel is a good man," Nathan confirmed, though something in his voice gave Eleanor pause. "He will provide for you, keep you safe. His ranch is prosperous and he treats his workers fairly." "But—" Eleanor prompted, sensing there was more. Nathan glanced at her, and in his eyes she saw a conflict he was clearly struggling with. "But he is also a man of this place, of this time. He is loud when he laughs, moves quickly, runs his ranch with firm authority. He is not unkind, but he is not—" He trailed off, seeming to search for the right words. "He is not soft," Eleanor finished for him, and her heart sank. "No," Nathan agreed quietly. "He is not soft." They sat in heavy silence as the implications of this settled over Eleanor. She had traveled thousands of miles to marry a man who might, through no fault of his own, terrify her on a daily basis simply by being himself. "Perhaps I can learn to adjust," Eleanor said, though even she did not believe it. "Perhaps exposure to normal sounds and movements will help me overcome my fear." Nathan stood slowly, brushing crumbs from his trousers. "Perhaps," he said, but he did not sound convinced. "We should continue on. Samuel will be expecting us before supper." The remaining half of their journey passed in contemplative quiet. Eleanor found her anxiety building with each mile, her mind conjuring images of Samuel Garrett as a large, boisterous man who would shake her hand too firmly, laugh too loudly, expect a wife who could stand beside him without flinching at his presence. When they finally crested a rise, and the Double O Ranch spread out below them, Eleanor's breath caught. It was larger than she had imagined, a sprawling operation with a substantial main house, several outbuildings, corrals filled with horses and cattle, and what looked like quarters for ranch hands. Smoke rose from the chimney of the main house, and men moved about the property going about their evening chores. Nathan guided the wagon down the slope and into the main yard. Almost immediately, the door to the house flew open and a large man bounded out, his boots hitting the porch steps with heavy thuds. Eleanor barely suppressed a gasp, shrinking back against the wagon seat. "You made it," Samuel Garrett boomed, his voice carrying across the yard like thunder. He was a big man, well over 6 feet tall and built like a bull, with a thick beard and hands the size of dinner plates. "Miss Vincent, I have been waiting with great anticipation for your arrival." He strode toward the wagon with quick, decisive steps, and Eleanor felt her entire body go rigid. Her hands gripped the edge of the seat so tightly, her knuckles turned white, and black spots danced at the edges of her vision as her breath came in short, panicked gasps. Nathan immediately positioned himself between Eleanor and Samuel, and though he did not raise his voice, something in his tone made the larger man stop in his tracks. "Samuel, give her a moment. The journey has been long and difficult." Samuel's exuberant expression faltered, confusion crossing his broad features. Of course, I just thought. Well, I am pleased to see her is all." "I know," Nathan said, his voice still calm and measured, "but perhaps approach more slowly. She is unused to our ways here." Understanding seemed to dawn on Samuel, and he took a deliberate step backward, holding up his massive hands in a placating gesture. "Forgive me, Miss Vincent. I did not mean to overwhelm you. Nathan is right. I forget myself sometimes. I am just excited to finally meet you in person after all those letters." Eleanor forced herself to take a breath, then another. Nathan had not moved from his protective position, and somehow his solid presence between her and Samuel helped ground her racing thoughts. She managed a shaky nod. "Thank you, Mr. Garrett," she said, her voice barely audible. "It is good to meet you as well." Samuel beamed, though he was careful to stay where he was. "Please call me Samuel. We are to be married after all. I have had Maria, our housekeeper, prepare a room for you. I thought you might want to rest and refresh yourself before supper. We can talk more then, get to know each other properly." "That would be appreciated," Eleanor said, finding it slightly easier to breathe now that Samuel was standing still and had moderated his volume somewhat. Nathan climbed down from the wagon and moved to retrieve Eleanor's trunk. This time, when he offered his hand to help her down, Eleanor took it, needing the support after the shock of Samuel's boisterous greeting. Nathan's hand was warm and calloused, his grip steady but gentle. He released her the moment her feet touched the ground. A Mexican woman emerged from the house, her dark eyes kind and her manner efficient. "I am Maria," she said, her accent thick but her English clear. "Come, I will show you to your room. You must be exhausted, pobrecita." Eleanor followed Maria into the house gratefully, aware of both men watching her go. The interior of the ranch house was rustic but comfortable, with sturdy furniture and colorful woven rugs on the wooden floors. Maria led her up a set of stairs to a spacious bedroom with windows overlooking the eastern pastures. The bed was covered with a beautiful quilt, and fresh flowers sat on the dresser. "The basin has clean water," Maria said, gesturing to the washstand. "I will bring hot water for a proper bath if you would like. Supper will be in 1 hour. Do you need anything else?" "No, thank you. This is more than adequate." Maria nodded and left, closing the door softly behind her. Alone for the first time since arriving, Eleanor sank onto the bed and let the tears she had been holding back finally fall. What had she done? Samuel seemed kind enough, but his very presence made her want to flee. How could she possibly marry him, share a life with him, when every cell in her body screamed danger at his approach? A knock at the door startled her some time later. "Miss Vincent, it is Maria. I have hot water for your bath." Eleanor dried her eyes quickly and opened the door. Maria entered with 2 young ranch hands carrying a tin tub and buckets of steaming water. They set everything up with quiet efficiency, then departed. Maria lingered, studying Eleanor with perceptive eyes. The West is not an easy place for women like us, she said finally. I came here from Mexico with my husband 20 years ago. Everything was strange and frightening, but you will find your place, I think. Give it time. How much time? Eleanor asked, unable to keep the desperation from her voice. Maria smiled sadly. That depends on many things. Now, bathe and dress. I will come fetch you for supper when it is ready. The hot bath helped ease some of Eleanor's physical tension, though her nerves remained taut as wire. She dressed in her best remaining dress, a simple blue cotton that had survived the journey relatively unscathed, and tried to tame her blonde hair into something presentable. When Maria returned to escort her to supper, Eleanor felt as prepared as she was likely to get. The dining room held a long wooden table already set for the meal. Samuel sat at the head, and Nathan occupied a seat halfway down on one side. Two other men, presumably ranch hands, sat across from Nathan. Everyone stood when Eleanor entered. "Miss Vincent, please sit here," Samuel said, gesturing to the chair on his right. He had clearly tried to moderate his voice, but it still rumbled like distant thunder, and Eleanor had to force herself not to bolt. She made her way to the indicated chair, hyper-aware of all the eyes on her. Nathan pulled out the chair slowly, carefully, and she murmured her thanks as she sat. He took his own seat again, and the others followed suit. Maria and a young girl Eleanor assumed was her daughter brought out platters of food: beef, beans, tortillas, and roasted vegetables. The smells were wonderful, but Eleanor's stomach was knotted too tightly for her to feel hungry. "I hope you are not too weary from your travels," Samuel said, attempting to start conversation. "The journey from Boston must have been arduous." "It was long," Eleanor replied, keeping her eyes on her plate as she served herself small portions. "But the stage line was reliable. I am glad to hear it. I worried about you making such a trip alone. The West can be dangerous for an unaccompanied woman." One of the other ranch hands, a young man with red hair and freckles, leaned forward eagerly. "Did you see any Indian raids? Or bandits? I heard tell the Santa Fe route has been plagued by trouble lately." His loud, enthusiastic voice made Eleanor flinch, and she saw Nathan shoot the young man a warning look. "The journey was uneventful," Eleanor managed. Samuel cleared his throat. "Well, you are here safe now, and that is what matters. I want you to feel at home here, Miss Vincent. This will be your home soon enough once we are married." "When did you intend for the wedding to take place?" Eleanor asked, dreading the answer. "I thought perhaps in 2 weeks' time. That would give you time to settle in, get to know the ranch and the area. The preacher comes through Chisum Ranch once a month, and he is due back in a fortnight. Does that suit you? 2 weeks. 14 days to decide if she could truly go through with this." Eleanor nodded numbly. "That seems reasonable." The meal continued with various attempts at conversation, Samuel doing his best to draw Eleanor out while the ranch hands contributed occasional comments. Through it all, Nathan remained quiet, speaking only when directly addressed. Eleanor found herself watching him more than was probably appropriate, noticing how he cut his food with deliberate care, how he chewed thoughtfully, how his presence seemed to create a buffer of calm even in the midst of the louder personalities around the table. When the meal finally ended, Samuel stood with his characteristic energy, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. Eleanor jumped at the sound and immediately felt foolish for her reaction. "Would you like to take a turn around the yard?" Samuel asked, his tone hopeful. "I could show you some of the ranch, introduce you to a few of the horses. We have some fine animals." The thought of being alone with Samuel in the darkening evening, even in the open air, filled Eleanor with irrational panic. "I am rather tired," she said quickly. "Perhaps tomorrow in the daylight." Samuel's disappointment was evident, but he rallied with forced cheer. Of course, of course. Tomorrow then. Nathan, would you escort Miss Vincent back to her room? I need to discuss some matters with the men about tomorrow's work. Nathan rose smoothly from his seat. This way, Miss Vincent. Eleanor followed him gratefully out of the dining room and up the stairs. When they reached her door, she paused, knowing she should thank him and go inside, but finding herself reluctant to lose his calming presence. He is trying, Nathan said softly, as though reading her thoughts. Samuel is a good man, but subtlety has never been his strength. I know he means well, Eleanor replied, her voice small. That makes it worse somehow. I feel ungrateful, foolish. He has offered me security, a home, and I repay him by flinching at his every word and gesture. Nathan leaned against the wall, maintaining a respectful distance. You are not foolish. What you experienced, what shaped these reactions in you, that was real. Your body remembers even when your mind knows there is no true danger. How do you know so much about it? Eleanor asked, genuinely curious. My mother, Nathan said simply. Before my father won her trust, she was the same. Her first husband, a man from a neighboring tribe, had beaten her badly. She had fled with just the clothes on her back. When my father found her, half frozen in the mountains, she could barely stand to be in the same room with him. He had to earn every bit of her trust through patience and consistency. What happened? How did she overcome it? Nathan smiled slightly, a distant look in his eyes. She never fully overcame it. There were always things that startled her, moments when old fears would surface. But my father learned to move through the world in a way that accommodated her needs. He became quieter, gentler, more aware. And over time, she learned that not all men were like the one who had hurt her. Their love was deep and true, but it required both of them to adapt. Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes again. Samuel is not going to change who he is. This is his ranch, his life. I am the outsider here. No, Samuel will not change his fundamental nature, Nathan agreed. And perhaps that is as it should be. Something in his tone made Eleanor look at him sharply. In the lamplight, his features were cast in shadow and gold, his eyes dark and unreadable. The air between them suddenly felt charged with unspoken words, dangerous possibilities. I should go to bed, Eleanor said, her voice unsteady. Yes, Nathan replied, but he did not move. Miss Vincent, I want you to know that whatever you decide, whatever happens, you have friends here. Maria is a good woman and she will help you. And if you ever need anything, anything at all, you can come to me. I live in the foreman's quarters, the small house behind the stables. Why are you being so kind to me? Eleanor asked, the question escaping before she could stop it. Nathan was quiet for a long moment. Because everyone deserves kindness, he said finally, and because I see something in you worth protecting. Good night, Miss Vincent. He walked away before she could respond, his boots making soft sounds on the wooden floor. Eleanor slipped into her room, closing the door and leaning against it, as her heart raced for entirely different reasons than fear. The next morning dawned clear and hot. Eleanor woke early, disoriented for a moment before remembering where she was. She dressed in a simple work dress, brushing out her hair and pinning it up carefully. When she descended to the dining room, she found Nathan already there, talking quietly with Maria over coffee. They both looked up as she entered. Good morning, Miss Vincent, Maria said warmly. Come, sit. I have made breakfast. Nathan was just telling me he plans to take the wagon into Chisum Ranch today for supplies. Perhaps you would like to accompany him. It would give you a chance to see the town properly in the daylight. Nathan stood, his chair sliding back silently. I would be happy to have the company, if you wish to come. The thought of spending time with Nathan, away from the ranch and Samuel's well-meaning but overwhelming presence, appealed to Eleanor more than was probably appropriate. "I would like that, thank you." They departed after breakfast, the morning air still relatively cool. The town of Chisum Ranch, named for the famous cattle baron John Chisum, whose sprawling ranch dominated the region, was only about 5 miles from the Double O. Nathan drove the wagon with his usual easy competence, the horses responding to his gentle commands. "Samuel was up before dawn," Nathan said after a while. "He took some of the men to check on a herd in the northern pasture. He asked me to express his regrets that he could not breakfast with you." "That is all right," Eleanor said, and realized she meant it. The absence of Samuel's boisterous energy made it easier to breathe. "He is trying to give you space," Nathan continued. "He asked me last night what he should do differently. I told him you need time to adjust, that he should let you set the pace of things. You seem to have significant influence with him," Eleanor observed. "We have worked together for 5 years. He trusts my judgment and I respect his authority. It makes for a good working relationship." "And you are content here, as a foreman?" Nathan considered the question. "Content is relative, I suppose. The work is honest, the pay is fair, and Samuel gives me autonomy to run things as I see fit. I have a place here, a purpose. That is more than many people can say." "But," Eleanor prompted, hearing the unspoken reservation. Nathan smiled slightly. "But sometimes I wonder what else might be possible. My father's dream was to have his own ranch someday, a place where my mother's people and his could exist together peacefully. He never achieved it, but the dream stayed with me. Why have you not pursued it? Land costs money. Building a ranch from nothing costs even more. I save what I can, but it would take years to accumulate enough to make the dream reality." He glanced at her, then away. "And perhaps I am just making excuses. Perhaps the truth is I am afraid to reach for something beyond my grasp." Eleanor was quiet, absorbing this vulnerability. It struck her that Nathan was sharing something deeply personal, trusting her with dreams he probably rarely voiced aloud. They reached Chisum Ranch just as the town was coming fully to life. Nathan pulled the wagon up in front of the general store, then came around to help Eleanor down. She took his offered hand without hesitation this time, noticing how natural it felt, how right. The store was dim and cool inside, packed with goods of every description. The proprietor, a thin man with wire spectacles, greeted Nathan warmly and eyed Eleanor with undisguised curiosity. "This is Miss Vincent," Nathan said simply. "She is staying at the Double O." "Miss Vincent, this is Mr. Hutchins. He runs the store and the post office both." "A pleasure to meet you," Mr. Hutchins said, his voice nasal but not unpleasant. "We do not get many new faces in town, especially not ladies from back east. Welcome to New Mexico territory." "Thank you," Eleanor said, managing a small smile. Nathan conducted his business efficiently, ordering supplies to be loaded while Eleanor browsed the store. She found herself drawn to the fabric section, running her fingers over bolts of calico and muslin. There were buttons and ribbons, threads in various colors, all the materials necessary for making a proper wardrobe. "You sew?" Nathan asked, appearing beside her with his characteristic quietness. "Yes, though I had to leave most of my sewing supplies behind. I could only bring what fit in my trunk. You should get what you need. Samuel told me to extend you credit at the store for anything you require." Eleanor hesitated. "I do not want to take advantage of his generosity. It is not taking advantage to prepare for your new life here. You will need practical clothing for this climate. Those Eastern dresses will not hold up to the dust and heat." He had a point. Eleanor selected some sturdy cotton fabric, thread, needles, and other basic supplies. Mr. Hutchins added them to Samuel's account without comment. As they left the store, A commotion at the far end of the street drew their attention. A group of cowboys on horseback were whooping and firing their pistols into the air, clearly already drunk despite the early hour. The sharp crack of gunfire sent Eleanor stumbling backward, her hands flying to her ears as panic seized her throat. Nathan immediately stepped between her and the noise, his body blocking her view of the rowdy men. "Easy," he said, his voice cutting through the chaos in her mind. "You are safe. They are just celebrating. Come, let us move away from here." He placed a gentle hand on her elbow, guiding her back toward where the wagon was parked behind the store, away from the main street. Eleanor's breath came in gasps, her vision tunneling, all the old terror flooding back. "Breathe with me," Nathan said, positioning himself where she could see him clearly. "In through your nose, out through your mouth. That is it. Again. You are doing well." He breathed with her, slow and steady, until the panic began to recede and the world came back into focus. Eleanor became aware that she was clutching his forearm, her fingers digging into his shirt, and she quickly released him. "I am sorry," she gasped. "I am so sorry. You must think I am completely mad." "I think you are brave," Nathan said firmly. "You came all this way, knowing you would face situations that terrify you because you were seeking something better. That is not madness. That is courage." Eleanor wanted to believe him, but the shame of her reaction still burned hot in her chest. "I cannot live like this, jumping at every sound, hiding from life." "You do not have to live like this," Nathan said. "But healing takes time. You cannot force it or rush it." They stood there for a long moment, the distant sounds of the town fading to background noise. Nathan made no move to hurry her, content to wait until she was ready to continue. "Why are you not married?" Eleanor asked suddenly. "A man like you, surely women would." Nathan smiled ruefully. "A half-breed foreman with no land and limited prospects. There are not many women interested in such a match, and I have never been one for the saloon girls or casual attachments. I suppose I am waiting for something real, even if it never comes." The way he looked at her when he said it made Eleanor's heart skip. She knew she should not be feeling what she was feeling, standing here with a man who was not her intended, finding comfort and safety she had never experienced before. But she could not deny the pull between them, the sense that something significant was shifting. "We should head back," Nathan said, though he sounded reluctant. "Samuel will be returning for the noon meal, and he will want to see you." The drive back to the ranch seemed to pass too quickly. Eleanor found herself wishing the road was longer, that they could continue driving endlessly across the New Mexico landscape, suspended in this bubble of peace and understanding. When they arrived back at the 00, Samuel was indeed waiting, pacing the front porch with barely contained energy. He bounded down the steps as the wagon rolled to a stop, and Eleanor had to consciously fight the urge to shrink back. "There you are," Samuel boomed, then visibly tried to modulate his volume. "Did you have a good trip to town? Get everything you needed?" "Yes, thank you," Eleanor said, accepting Nathan's hand as she climbed down from the wagon. "Mr. Hutchins was very helpful." "Good, good. I thought perhaps after the noon meal you might like to walk around the ranch properly. I could show you the horses, the cattle, give you a sense of the operation. It is important for the ranch wife to understand the business, I think." The thought of being alone with Samuel still filled Eleanor with dread, but she knew she could not avoid it forever. If she was going to marry this man, she needed to at least try to become comfortable in his presence. "That would be fine," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. The meal was similar to the previous evening, with Samuel trying hard to engage Eleanor in conversation, and Eleanor responding with monosyllabic answers. Nathan watched the awkward exchange with barely concealed concern. After they finished eating, Samuel led Eleanor outside to begin the promised tour. Nathan excused himself to oversee the unloading of the supplies, but Eleanor could feel his eyes on them as they walked away. Samuel showed her the corrals first, pointing out various horses and explaining their bloodlines and training. He was clearly passionate about his animals, and when he forgot to monitor his volume, his voice rose with enthusiasm, causing Eleanor to jump repeatedly. Each time she did, Samuel would apologize and try again to speak more softly, but his natural exuberance kept bubbling up. "I am trying," Samuel said finally, frustration evident in his tone. "I truly am trying, Miss Vincent, but I do not know how to be someone I am not." "I know," Eleanor said, feeling wretched. "I am sorry. This is not your fault." "It is not yours either," Samuel replied, his expression softening. "Nathan explained a bit about your past. I cannot imagine what you have endured, but I need you to understand I would never hurt you. Not ever." "My mind knows that," Eleanor said quietly, "but my body does not seem to have received the message." They walked in silence for a bit, the awkwardness settling over them like a heavy blanket. Samuel showed her the cattle in the near pastures, the hen house where Maria collected eggs each morning, the various outbuildings and their purposes. It was clear he had built something substantial here, that he was a capable and successful rancher. "Can I ask you something?" Samuel said as they circled back toward the main house. "And I want you to be honest with me." Eleanor braced herself. "Of course. You think you could ever be happy here, with me?" It was the question Eleanor had been asking herself since she arrived, and she still had no good answer. "I do not know," she admitted. "I want to. I want to believe I can adapt, that time and familiarity will ease my reactions. But truthfully, Samuel, I am not certain." Samuel stopped walking and turned to face her. "I appreciate your honesty. And I want you to know, if you decide you cannot go through with the wedding, I will not hold it against you. I will make sure you have funds to return east or to go wherever you wish. I want a wife, Miss Vincent, but not one who lives in fear of me." His words were kind, his offer generous, but they only made Eleanor feel worse. "You deserve better than this," she said, tears stinging her eyes. "You deserve a woman who can stand beside you without flinching, who can share your life fully." "Perhaps," Samuel agreed. "But we do not always get what we deserve. We get what life gives us and we make the best of it." He sighed heavily. "Think on it, Miss Vincent. Take the time you need. The wedding is not for 2 weeks yet. Perhaps things will look different with more time." He left her then, walking toward the stables with slumped shoulders. Eleanor stood alone in the yard, feeling like the worst sort of person. She had come here with such hope, such determination to build a new life. Now it all seemed to be crumbling before it had even begun. "Miss Vincent." Maria appeared at her elbow. "Come inside, Mija. You look like you need some tea and a friendly ear." Eleanor followed the older woman into the kitchen, where Maria set about preparing tea and settling Eleanor at the worn wooden table. The kitchen was warm and smelled of bread and spices, the heart of the house. "I have made a mess of things," Eleanor said once Maria sat down across from her with 2 steaming cups. "You have made nothing," Maria said firmly. "You have a difficulty, that is all. And difficulties can be overcome with time and patience." "Samuel is a good man," Eleanor said. "I can see that clearly, but being near him is like being near a thunderstorm. I know it cannot hurt me, but I cannot help but want to take shelter." Maria was quiet for a moment, sipping her tea thoughtfully. "Can I tell you something I have observed?" she finally said. "Something that perhaps you have not let yourself acknowledge." Eleanor nodded, though she felt a flutter of anxiety. "It is not Samuel you think of when you lie awake at night. It is Nathan." The words hit Eleanor like a physical blow, all the more powerful because they were true. She had been trying so hard not to examine the feelings growing inside her, the way her body relaxed in Nathan's presence, the way her mind kept returning to moments shared with him. "I cannot," Eleanor whispered. "He is Samuel's foreman. Samuel is the man I came here to marry. It would be wrong." "Would it?" Maria challenged gently. "You have made no vows yet. You are under no obligation. But Samuel has spent money bringing me here, has made plans, has expectations. And Samuel is a practical man. He will not want a wife who cannot bear to be near him. That is no kindness to either of you." Maria reached across the table and took Eleanor's hand. "Listen to your heart, Mija. What does it tell you?" Eleanor's heart was telling her dangerous things, impossible things. It was telling her that Nathan Oakes, with his quiet strength and gentle ways, had somehow slipped past all her defenses. It was telling her that she felt safer with him than she had felt in years, maybe ever. It was telling her that the love story she had hoped to find with Samuel was actually unfolding with someone entirely different. Even if I acknowledged these feelings, what could come of it? Nathan has made no indication that he feels anything beyond friendliness toward me. And I cannot simply abandon Samuel for his employee. The scandal alone would be devastating. "Nathan is too honorable to speak first," Maria said. "He would never betray Samuel's trust or take advantage of your situation. But I have eyes, and I see how he looks at you when he thinks no one is watching. I see how he positions himself between you and anything that might cause you distress. That man is falling in love with you, whether he has admitted it to himself or not." Eleanor felt her breath catch. The possibility both thrilled and terrified her. "What do I do?" "That I cannot tell you. But you must be honest with Samuel, with Nathan, and with yourself. These things have a way of becoming more complicated the longer they are left unspoken." That evening, Eleanor claimed a headache and took her supper in her room. She needed time to think, to sort through the tangle of emotions and obligations. Through her window, she could see Nathan moving about the yard, speaking with ranch hands, checking on the horses. Even from this distance, she could see the grace in his movements, the quiet authority he commanded. Around sunset, there was a soft knock at her door. Eleanor opened it to find Nathan standing there, his hat in his hands, his expression concerned. "Maria said you were not feeling well. I brought you some willow bark tea. It helps with headaches." "Thank you," Eleanor said, accepting the cup. "That is very thoughtful." Nathan nodded but did not leave. "May I speak with you for a moment? I promise not to take too much of your time." Eleanor stepped back, allowing him to enter. He left the door partially open, proper even in this, and stood near the window, maintaining respectful distance. "Samuel spoke to me this afternoon," Nathan said quietly. "He told me about your conversation, about his offer to send you back east if you wish to leave." "He is being more than fair," Eleanor said. "He is a good man," Nathan agreed, "but that does not make him the right man, not for you." The directness of this statement caught Eleanor off guard. "Nathan." "Please let me finish," he said, his voice still soft but carrying an urgency she had not heard before. "I know I have no right to speak, no claim on you. You came here to marry Samuel, and he has every expectation of that happening. But I cannot stand by and watch you force yourself into a life that will make you miserable out of some misplaced sense of obligation." "It is not just obligation," Eleanor protested weakly. "Samuel has been generous. He deserves a wife who can love him fully without fear. And you deserve a life where you do not have to constantly brace yourself against the man you have married." Nathan took a step closer, his eyes intense in the fading light. "There are other options, other possibilities you might not have considered." Eleanor's heart was racing now. "What are you saying?" Nathan seemed to gather his courage, his hands tightening on the brim of his hat. I am saying that I would never make you flinch. I am saying that I could give you the space and gentleness you need. I may not have a grand ranch or Samuel's wealth, but I could provide for you, protect you, cherish you in the way you deserve." He paused, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "I am saying that I have fallen in love with you, Eleanor, and if there is any chance you might feel the same, I would count myself the most fortunate man alive." Eleanor felt tears spill down her cheeks. "I do," she admitted. "I feel the same. From almost the first moment I met you, there has been something. But Nathan, what about Samuel? How could we possibly let me speak to him?" Nathan said. "Tonight. I will be honest with him, tell him everything. It will hurt him, and I regret that deeply. But living a lie would hurt him far worse in the end. Samuel values honesty above almost all else. He will be angry, certainly, but he will respect the truth. And if he sends us both away, then we will go," Nathan said simply. "I have some money saved. We could go to Texas or California. I could find work on another ranch, or perhaps start small with a few head of cattle. It would not be easy, but we would be together." The enormity of what he was suggesting crashed over Eleanor. To abandon the safe, secure future Samuel offered for an uncertain life with a man she had known less than 2 days. It was reckless, impractical, possibly foolish. It was also exactly what her heart wanted. "Are you certain?" Eleanor asked. "You would give up your position here, your friendship with Samuel, everything you have built, for me?" Nathan crossed the distance between them in 2 long strides, his hands coming up to gently cup her face. His touch was warm and infinitely tender, his calloused thumbs brushing away her tears. "Eleanor, I would give up far more than that. You are worth everything." He kissed her then, softly and reverently, as though she were something precious and fragile. Eleanor melted into him, her hands clutching his shirt, amazed at how safe she felt in his arms, how right this all felt despite the complications surrounding them. When they finally broke apart, Nathan rested his forehead against hers, his breath warm against her face. "I will speak to Samuel tonight after everyone has retired. Whatever happens, know that I meant every word." He left then, and Eleanor sank onto her bed, her heart pounding and her mind whirling. She had come west seeking security and found love instead. Now she had to trust that everything would work out as it was meant to. The house settled into quiet as evening deepened into night. Eleanor lay awake, listening to the sounds of the ranch bedding down for the night. She heard boots on the stairs, low voices, doors closing. Then, perhaps an hour after full dark, she heard heavier footsteps approaching, then stopping outside her door. There was no knock, but Eleanor could sense someone standing there. After a long moment, the footsteps retreated, moving down the stairs and out of the house. She went to her window and saw Samuel's large form crossing the yard toward the small foreman's house where Nathan lived. Eleanor's stomach clenched with anxiety. The conversation she could not hear was happening now, determining the course of all their futures. The minutes stretched interminably. Eleanor paced her room, praying that Nathan would find the right words, that Samuel would somehow understand. She knew she was asking much, perhaps too much. Samuel had every right to his anger, to feel betrayed by both of them. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only about 30 minutes, she saw Samuel emerge from Nathan's house. Even from this distance, she could see the tension in his shoulders, the heaviness of his gait. He did not return to the main house, but instead walked out toward the corrals, disappearing into the darkness. Eleanor did not see Nathan that night, and she tossed and turned until exhaustion finally claimed her in the early morning hours. She woke to bright sunlight and the sound of voices in the yard. Rushing to her window, she saw ranch hands moving about their morning duties, but no sign of either Nathan or Samuel. Her heart sank. Perhaps Nathan had already been sent away. Perhaps Samuel had been so angry that he had demanded Nathan leave immediately. Eleanor dressed quickly and hurried downstairs. She found Maria in the kitchen, her expression somber. "Samuel wishes to speak with you," Maria said without preamble. "He is in his study." "Is Nathan? Nathan is still here. He is in the stables, but you should speak to Samuel first." Eleanor made her way to the study on trembling legs. She knocked softly, and Samuel's voice called for her to enter. The study was a masculine space, lined with books and ledgers, dominated by a large desk covered in papers and maps. Samuel sat behind the desk, and Eleanor was struck by how weary he looked, as though he had not slept at all. "Sit, please," Samuel said, gesturing to a chair across from him. Eleanor sat, folding her hands in her lap to keep them from shaking. Samuel was quiet for a long moment, studying her with an unreadable expression. "Nathan came to me last night," he finally said. "He told me everything, about his feelings for you and yours for him." "Samuel, I am so sorry," Eleanor began, but he held up a hand. "Let me finish, please. I have thought about this all night, walked miles in the darkness trying to sort through my feelings." He leaned back in his chair, his large hands spread flat on the desk. "I will not lie to you, Miss Vincent. It hurts. I had plans, expectations. I pictured a certain future, and now that has been taken from me. I feel foolish for not seeing what was developing right in front of me." "You have every right to be angry," Eleanor said, tears gathering in her eyes. "I never meant for this to happen. I came here with every intention of fulfilling my commitment to you." "I know you did," Samuel said, his voice gentling slightly. "And that is why I have decided to release you from that commitment. Nathan was right when he told me that forcing you to marry me would be a cruelty to both of us. You would live in constant anxiety, and I would spend my life walking on eggshells, never able to fully be myself in my own home. That is no kind of marriage." Relief flooded through Eleanor, followed immediately by guilt. "Thank you," she whispered. "Your understanding means more than I can express." "I am not done," Samuel said. "I am releasing you from your obligation to me, but I am not sending either of you away. Nathan has been my friend and most trusted worker for 5 years. He has helped build this ranch into what it is. I would be a fool to lose him over this, and you—" He paused, his expression softening. "You deserve happiness, Miss Vincent. You have been through enough. If Nathan can give you the peace and safety you need, then I am glad for you both." Eleanor could not stop the tears now. "Samuel, I do not know what to say." "Your generosity, I have conditions," Samuel continued. "Nathan will remain as foreman, but I am giving him a parcel of land on the northern edge of the property. 500 acres, enough to start a small herd of his own while still managing the Double O. He can build a house there, start his own ranch. It is not charity," he added quickly, seeing Eleanor's expression. "It is payment for 5 years of loyal service and excellent work. The man has earned it." "He will be overwhelmed," Eleanor said, struggling to process Samuel's unexpected generosity. "He already is. I told him last night, and I thought the man might actually break down." Samuel smiled slightly, the first hint of warmth returning to his features. "You will marry him properly, with a preacher and witnesses. I will not have anyone saying I took advantage of a woman, or that Nathan stole another man's bride. We will tell people that you and I met and quickly realized we would not suit, but that you and Nathan found affection instead. It is close enough to the truth without causing scandal." "Why are you doing this?" Eleanor asked, amazed by his kindness in the face of what must be painful disappointment. Samuel was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. "Because my parents loved each other deeply, and I saw what that looked like. I saw how they moved together, how they spoke to each other, how they fit. I want that for myself someday, but I also recognize it when I see it in others. What you and Nathan have, even in these few days, that is the beginning of something real. I would be a petty man to destroy it out of wounded pride. He stood then, moving around the desk to stand before Eleanor. She had to tilt her head back to look at him, and she realized this was the closest he had been to her without her flinching. Perhaps, with the pressure of their impending marriage removed, she could finally see him clearly as the good man he was, rather than through the lens of her fear. "Thank you, Samuel," Eleanor said, rising to her feet. "I hope someday you find the woman who deserves you, who can give you the love you deserve." "I hope so too," Samuel said. "Now go find Nathan. He is likely wearing a hole in the stable floor from pacing." Eleanor did not need to be told twice. She hurried out of the house and across the yard to the stables. Inside, the building was dim and sweet with the smell of hay and horses. She found Nathan exactly where Samuel had predicted, pacing in the wide aisle between the stalls. He looked up as she entered, his expression anxious. "Did you speak with him?" "I did," Eleanor said, closing the distance between them. "He is releasing me from our engagement, and he is giving you land, Nathan. 500 acres to start your own ranch." Nathan's legs seemed to give out, and he sank onto a nearby hay bale. "I can hardly believe it. I expected him to send us both packing. Instead he is." He shook his head in wonder. "He is a better man than I gave him credit for." "He is a very good man," Eleanor agreed, sitting beside Nathan, "which makes me feel even worse about hurting him." "He will heal," Nathan said, taking her hand in his. "And perhaps in time we can all be friends again. For now, though, we have a future to plan." He turned to face her fully, his expression solemn. "Eleanor Vincent, I know the circumstances are unusual, and perhaps it is too soon, but I need to ask you properly. Will you marry me? Not because you need a husband or security, but because you want to build a life with me." Eleanor felt joy bubble up in her chest, pure and bright. "Yes, Nathan Oakes. I will marry you because you make me feel safe in a way I never thought possible. Because when I imagine my future now, you are in every part of it. Because I love you." Nathan pulled her into his arms, holding her close, and Eleanor sank into his embrace without a trace of fear. This was where she belonged, she realized. Not in the grand ranch house with its security and stability, but here, with this gentle man who moved through the world with quiet grace. They were married 2 weeks later when the circuit preacher arrived in Chisum Ranch. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, held in the small church at the edge of town. Samuel stood as witness, alongside Maria and several of the ranch hands. If anyone found the situation unusual, they kept their opinions to themselves. Nathan had used the 2 weeks to begin work on a small cabin on the northern parcel of land Samuel had deeded to him. It was not finished yet, but the foundation was laid and the framing had begun. In the meantime, Nathan moved into one of the larger rooms in the ranch hands' quarters, and Eleanor remained in the main house. They maintained propriety until their wedding night, though it was difficult being so close yet unable to truly be together. Their wedding night was spent not in the unfinished cabin but in a room at the small hotel in Chisum Ranch, a gift from Samuel, who insisted they deserved a proper wedding trip, even if it was only a single night away from the ranch. Nathan carried Eleanor over the threshold with gentle care, setting her down slowly and stepping back to give her space. "We do not have to do anything tonight," he said softly. "If you need time," Eleanor pressed her fingers to his lips, silencing him. "I have never been more certain of anything than I am of this," she said. "Of us." They came together slowly, tenderly, Nathan taking infinite care to make sure Eleanor felt safe and cherished. He moved with the same quiet patience he brought to everything else, reading her responses, adjusting to her needs. Eleanor had feared this intimacy, had spent years dreading the idea of being vulnerable with a man. But with Nathan, there was no fear, only trust and growing passion. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the darkness, Eleanor's head on Nathan's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I have been thinking," Nathan said, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "What would you think about incorporating some of my mother's traditions into our life? Not in a way that would make you uncomfortable, but small things. Beadwork, certain food stories. I would like our children to know that part of their heritage." "I would like that," Eleanor said. "Tell me about her. I want to know everything." Nathan talked late into the night, sharing memories of his mother, his father, the life they had built in the mountains of Wyoming Territory. Eleanor listened, occasionally asking questions, filing away these details about the man she had married. As dawn began to creep through the window, she felt herself drifting off, warm and safe and happier than she could remember being. They returned to the ranch the next morning to find the crew already hard at work on the cabin. Samuel had donated some of his men to help with the construction, speeding the process considerably. Within a month, the cabin was complete, modest but solid, with 2 rooms, a fireplace, and a porch that looked out over the land that now belonged to them. Eleanor threw herself into making the cabin a home, sewing curtains, building furniture alongside Nathan, planting a small garden. The work was harder than anything she had done in Boston, but it was satisfying in a way her old life had never been. She fell into bed exhausted each night, but it was a good exhaustion, earned through honest labor. Nathan proved to be an excellent teacher, patiently showing Eleanor how to manage the practical aspects of ranch life. She learned to gather eggs from the small henhouse Nathan had built, to churn butter, to preserve vegetables for winter. She learned to ride, starting with the gentlest mare in Samuel's string, Nathan leading her on a long line until she gained confidence. The ranch hands grew accustomed to seeing Eleanor about the property, and they were careful around her, having been warned by Nathan about her reactions to loud noises. Most of them were good men, and they adjusted their behavior without complaint. The few who did not quickly found themselves looking for work elsewhere, as Nathan had no patience for those who would not respect his wife's needs. Eleanor's friendship with Maria deepened, the older woman becoming a mother figure and confidante. Maria taught Eleanor to make tortillas and tamales, to use the local ingredients and spices. In return, Eleanor taught Maria to read and write in English, something Maria had always wanted to learn. They spent hours at Eleanor's small table, working through primers and simple books. Samuel, true to his word, remained friendly and supportive. He took meals at the main house while Nathan and Eleanor ate in their cabin, but they saw him regularly to discuss ranch business. The initial awkwardness gradually eased into a comfortable friendship. Eleanor came to genuinely care for Samuel and to feel grateful that fate had brought her to his ranch, even if not in the way any of them had originally planned. As months passed and Eleanor's comfort in her new life grew, she found her fear responses gradually diminishing. She still startled at unexpected noises occasionally, but the paralyzing panic became less frequent. Nathan never pushed her or expressed impatience with her healing process, and his steady presence gave her the security she needed to slowly expand her boundaries. Their first winter was harsh, with snow piling high and temperatures dropping well below freezing for weeks at a time. The cabin proved tight and warm, and Nathan had laid in ample supplies. They spent long evenings by the fire, Eleanor sewing while Nathan carved wood or repaired tack. Sometimes they just talked, sharing dreams and memories, building the foundation of their life together. In the spring, they discovered Eleanor was pregnant. Nathan was overjoyed, though he immediately became even more protective than before. Eleanor found his hovering both endearing and occasionally exasperating, but she understood it came from love. "I will not break," she told him one morning when he tried to prevent her from lifting a water bucket. "I am carrying a baby, not dying of consumption." "I know," Nathan said, though he still took the bucket from her. "I just want to keep you both safe." "We are safe," Eleanor assured him, cupping his face in her hands. "We have everything we need right here." The pregnancy progressed without complications, though Eleanor experienced considerable sickness in the early months. Maria proved invaluable, showing up at the cabin with remedies and advice, sitting with Eleanor through the worst of it. Samuel even contributed, sending his wagon to Santa Fe to fetch a doctor to check on Eleanor and ensure all was progressing normally. On a cold November morning, Eleanor went into labor. Nathan rode hard to fetch Maria and the doctor who happened to be in the area. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Nathan, waiting anxiously outside the cabin while Maria and the doctor attended Eleanor, thought he might lose his mind from helplessness. But finally, as the sun was setting, he heard the thin, angry wail of a newborn. Maria emerged from the bedroom, her face tired but smiling. "You have a son," she announced. "A strong, healthy boy, and your wife did wonderfully. She is asking for you." Nathan entered the bedroom to find Eleanor propped up in bed, exhausted and pale but smiling. In her arms was a tiny bundle, and Nathan approached slowly, afraid to breathe too hard lest he disturb this perfect moment. "Nathan, meet your son," Eleanor said softly, pulling back the blanket to reveal a red-faced infant with a shock of dark hair. Nathan sank onto the edge of the bed, his eyes filling with tears as he looked at his child. "He is perfect," he whispered. "You are amazing. I cannot believe you did this." "We did this," Eleanor corrected. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names throughout the pregnancy, and Nathan had mentioned that in his mother's tribe, children were often named for meaningful events or characteristics. "What about William, for his loud entrance into the world?" Nathan suggested. "It means strong-willed protector." "And perhaps we could give him a Shoshone name as well, something for family to use. What do you think of Nako? It means bear." "William Nako Oaks," Eleanor said, testing the name. "I love it. Hello, William. Welcome to our family." The baby squirmed and made a soft sound, and Eleanor guided him to nurse for the first time. Nathan watched in awe, overwhelmed by the love he felt for both of them. Samuel came to visit the next day, bringing gifts and congratulations. He held William with surprising gentleness for such a large man, a wistful expression on his face. "He is a fine boy," Samuel said, handing the baby back to Nathan carefully. "You are both blessed." "We are," Nathan agreed, "and we have you to thank for much of it, Samuel." "If you had not shown such grace and generosity, do not," Samuel interrupted. "I made the right choice. Seeing you two now with your son, it is clear this is how things were meant to be." "Have you met anyone?" Eleanor asked gently from the bed. "Any prospects for your own family?" Samuel smiled slightly. "Actually, there is a widow who moved to Chisum Ranch recently with her young daughter. Her husband died in a farming accident back in Kansas, and she came west to start over. Her name is Margaret, and she is different from what I imagined, but in a good way. We have been taking walks together after church on Sundays." "Samuel, that is wonderful," Eleanor exclaimed. "You must bring her to meet us." "In time," Samuel said. "We are taking things slowly. She needs space to grieve properly, and I am content to wait. Some things are worth waiting for." He left soon after, and Eleanor and Nathan exchanged pleased glances. The thought that Samuel might find his own happiness was deeply satisfying to both of them. William proved to be a relatively easy baby, sleeping well and nursing eagerly. He had Nathan's blue-green eyes and Eleanor's blonde hair, a beautiful combination. Eleanor discovered that motherhood came naturally to her, and she delighted in every milestone, every smile and coo. Nathan was a devoted father, walking the floor with William when he fussed at night, singing Shoshone lullabies his mother had taught him, teaching the baby about the ranch animals even though he was far too young to understand. Eleanor often found them together, Nathan's large hands cradling the tiny body with infinite care, his voice low and gentle as he told William stories. The ranch prospered under Nathan's continued management of Samuel's cattle and his own growing herd. The 500 acres Samuel had given them proved excellent grazing land, and Nathan's instincts for breeding and raising cattle yielded good profits. By the time William was 2 years old, Nathan had enough saved to hire 2 ranch hands of his own and to significantly expand the cabin, adding 2 more bedrooms and a proper dining area. Samuel married his widow Margaret in a small ceremony that spring. Eleanor and Nathan attended with William, who was a surprisingly well-behaved toddler throughout the service. Margaret proved to be a kind and capable woman, with a quiet strength that complemented Samuel well. Her daughter, a serious little girl named Rose who was about 8 years old, was initially shy around Samuel but gradually warmed to him. "We make quite a collection," Margaret said with amusement at the wedding celebration, watching as Rose played with William under Nathan's watchful eye while Samuel talked with some of the ranch hands. 2 mail-order situations that turned out very differently than planned. "But both for the best," Eleanor added. "You and Samuel seem very happy together." "We are," Margaret confirmed. "He is nothing like my first husband, who was cold and distant. Samuel is warm and full of life. He makes me laugh, and he adores Rose as though she were his own. I feel blessed to have found him." Eleanor squeezed her new friend's hand, glad that both she and Samuel had found their rightful partners. When William was 3, Eleanor found herself pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, perhaps because she knew what to expect. Their second child, a daughter they named Alice, was born on a warm May evening with much less drama than William's birth. She had Eleanor's blue eyes and Nathan's dark hair, and she was smaller and more delicate than William had been. William was fascinated by his baby sister, constantly wanting to hold her and help care for her. Nathan and Eleanor watched their children interact with full hearts, grateful for the family they had built. As the years passed, the small ranch grew into a respected operation. Nathan's reputation as a skilled cattleman spread, and he began selling breeding stock to other ranchers across New Mexico territory and beyond. Eleanor managed the household finances with careful attention, and she started a small side business making quilts and embroidered items that she sold through the general store in Chisum Ranch. Samuel and Margaret had 2 children of their own, boys born a year apart, and the 2 families spent considerable time together. The children grew up playing together, and the adults maintained deep friendships. Rose, who never quite took to ranch life despite Samuel's best efforts, eventually went east to attend a teaching college, though she returned frequently to visit. Eleanor found that her fear responses continued to fade over the years, though they never entirely disappeared. Certain sounds or movements would still trigger a momentary panic, but she had learned to manage these reactions, and Nathan's patient presence helped ground her. She came to view her past not as something to be ashamed of, but as something that had shaped her, had brought her to this place and this life. When William was 10 and Alice was 7, Nathan approached Eleanor with an idea. "I have been thinking about my mother's dream," he said one evening as they sat on their porch watching the sunset. "About creating a place where different peoples could live and work together peacefully. What would you think about employing some of the Mescalero Apache from the reservation? Teaching them ranching skills, paying fair wages, treating them with respect. I know it is idealistic, maybe even foolish." "It is not foolish," Eleanor interrupted. "It is beautiful, and we should do it." The experiment started small with two young Apache men who were eager to learn cattle work. Nathan taught them patiently, treating them as equals, and they proved quick learners and hard workers. Word spread on the reservation, and soon more young men were seeking employment. Nathan expanded his operation to accommodate them, building additional quarters and making sure everyone received fair treatment. The arrangement was not without challenges. Some neighboring ranchers disapproved, and there were occasional tensions between the white ranch hands and the Apache workers. But Nathan and Eleanor held firm to their principles, and over time, their ranch became known as a place of fairness and opportunity for all. One summer evening when Eleanor was 35 and Nathan was 38, they sat on their porch watching their children play in the yard. William, now 15, was teaching his sister Alice, 12, how to rope a fence post. Both children were skilled riders and capable ranch workers, having grown up immersed in the life. "You ever regret it?" Nathan asked, his arm around Eleanor's shoulders. "Coming west, the way everything turned out?" Eleanor leaned into him, breathing in his familiar scent of leather and sage. "Not for a single moment," she said. "Though I do sometimes wonder what would have happened if you had not been the one to meet my stage that day, if Samuel had come himself." "You would have found a way," Nathan said with confidence. "You are stronger than you ever give yourself credit for." "Perhaps," Eleanor allowed, "but I am grateful I did not have to find out. You were exactly what I needed, Nathan Oakes. You still are." Nathan kissed the top of her head. "And you were worth every risk, every uncertain moment. You and the children, this life we have built, this is everything I never dared to hope for." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the New Mexico sky in shades of orange and purple. In the distance, cattle lowed and horses whinnied. Inside the house, dinner was waiting. Around them, the ranch they had built together thrived. Samuel and Margaret rode up just then, leading their 3 children on horseback. "We thought we would stop by to see if you wanted to join us for supper at the main house tomorrow," Samuel called out. "Margaret is making her famous roast, and the children have been asking to see William and Alice." "We would love that," Eleanor called back, smiling. As their friends rode off, and their own children came running up to the porch, laughing and arguing good-naturedly about who was the better roper, Eleanor reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought her here. She had boarded that stage in Boston as a frightened woman fleeing her past, seeking nothing more than survival and basic security. She had found so much more. She had found a partner who understood her fears and gave her space to heal. She had found meaningful work and true friendship. She had found a community that, while imperfect, allowed her to carve out a place of her own. Most importantly, she had found love in its truest form, the kind that grew deeper and stronger with each passing year. "Mother, did you see? I almost got it that time." Alice ran up the porch steps, her face flushed with excitement. "I did see, sweetheart. You are getting much better," Eleanor said, pulling her daughter close for a quick hug. William followed more slowly, his expression thoughtful. "Father, some of the hands were talking about moving cattle to the northern pasture next week. Could I go with them? I am old enough now, and I promise I will work hard and follow all instructions." Nathan considered his son seriously. If you can complete all your regular chores for the next week without being reminded, then yes, you may go. William's face lit up. Thank you, I will, I promise. He bounded off to begin his evening chores immediately. He is growing up so fast, Eleanor said with a touch of melancholy. Soon he will be a man making his own way. He has time yet, Nathan assured her. And when he is ready, he will have a strong foundation to build from. We have given them both that much. As evening deepened into night, the family gathered for their meal, sharing stories from their day, making plans for tomorrow. It was an ordinary evening in an extraordinary life, and Eleanor savored every moment of it. Later, after the children were in bed and Nathan and Eleanor had retired to their own room, Nathan pulled her close in the darkness. I love you, Eleanor Oakes, he whispered. More today than yesterday and less than I will tomorrow. I love you too, Eleanor replied, her fingers tracing the familiar planes of his face. Thank you for moving slowly, for speaking softly, for seeing past my fear to the person underneath. Thank you for taking a chance on a half-breed foreman with more dreams than prospects, Nathan countered. For believing in me and the life we could build together. They fell asleep wrapped around each other, as they had every night for the past 13 years. The years continued to unfold with their mix of challenges and joys. William grew into a capable young man who shared his father's gift with horses and cattle. At 19, he surprised everyone by falling in love with one of the Apache workers' daughters, a beautiful and intelligent young woman named Ayana. Nathan and Eleanor gave their blessing, delighted that their son had found someone who truly understood and appreciated both sides of his heritage. Alice proved to have a gift for numbers and business, and as she grew older, she began managing more of the ranch's financial affairs. At 16, she announced her intention to attend a business college in Santa Fe, determined to bring modern management techniques to the ranch. Nathan and Eleanor supported her ambition, proud of their daughter's independent spirit. Samuel and Margaret's children also grew and thrived. The two families remained close, their ranches cooperating on large cattle drives and supporting each other through difficult times. When Samuel suffered a riding accident that laid him up for several months, Nathan stepped in to manage both operations seamlessly. When a harsh winter decimated Nathan's herd 2 years later, Samuel extended credit and shared his resources without hesitation. This is what it means to be family, Samuel said when Nathan tried to thank him. Not blood, but choice. We choose each other every day. As Eleanor approached her 40th year, she found herself reflecting on all that had changed since that terrifying day she had arrived in Chisum Ranch. She was no longer the frightened girl who flinched at every sound. She had become a confident woman who managed a household, raised children, built a business, and contributed to her community. The ranch now employed over 20 workers, a mix of white, Apache, and Mexican hands who worked together with relative harmony. Eleanor had started a small school on the property, teaching reading and basic mathematics to the workers' children. What had begun as a way to help a few kids had grown into a respected institution, with students coming from surrounding ranches as well. Nathan, now past 40, had silver threading through his dark hair and lines around his eyes from years of squinting into the sun. But his movements were still graceful, his voice still soft, his consideration for Eleanor's needs still constant. Their love had matured into something deep and abiding, a partnership built on mutual respect and genuine affection. One evening in early autumn, as they celebrated their 15th wedding anniversary, Nathan presented Eleanor with a gift. It was a beautiful quilt, but unlike any she had seen before. It incorporated traditional Shoshone geometric patterns worked in alongside more conventional quilt designs, a perfect blend of his mother's heritage and Eleanor's new world. "Maria helped me," Nathan admitted. "I told her what I wanted, and she showed me how to piece it together. It is not as fine as the work you do, but it is perfect," Eleanor interrupted, tears streaming down her face as she studied the intricate work. "It is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." "It tells our story," Nathan said, pointing to various sections. "See here, this pattern represents journey and new beginnings, and this one symbolizes home and safety. This section is for our children, and this one for the family we have built with Samuel and Margaret and all the people who work with us." Eleanor wrapped the quilt around both of them, pulling Nathan close. 15 years, she marveled. "It seems like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once." "Do you remember what you said that first day, hiding behind the water barrel?" Nathan asked. Eleanor laughed. "I was terrified. I thought I had made the worst mistake of my life. And now I know I made exactly the right choice, even if the outcome was not what I originally planned. Coming here, meeting you, building this life, it has been the greatest adventure of my life." Nathan kissed her softly. "Here is to 15 more years and 15 after that, and all the years we are blessed to have together." The future stretched before them, full of possibilities and challenges yet to face. William would marry soon, likely bringing Ayanna to live on the ranch, perhaps building his own cabin on a parcel of Nathan and Eleanor's land. Alice would finish her education and return, bringing new ideas and modern techniques. There would be more grandchildren in time, more growth, more change. But through it all, Eleanor knew she would have Nathan beside her, moving through life with the same quiet grace that had first captivated her heart. He would continue to speak softly and move slowly, not because she needed him to any more, but because that was who he was, a man who understood that true strength did not require volume or aggression, that the deepest love expressed itself through patient kindness. As they sat together on their porch that anniversary evening, wrapped in the quilt that told their story, watching the stars emerge in the vast New Mexico sky, Eleanor felt a peace she had never imagined possible during those dark years in Boston. She had traveled thousands of miles seeking safety and had found instead something infinitely more precious: home, in all its truest meanings. Nathan's hand found hers in the darkness, his calloused fingers intertwining with her smaller ones, and Eleanor smiled. This was love, she thought. Not the dramatic passion of story books, but this steady, enduring commitment. This choosing each other day after day through good times and hard. This building of something meaningful together, brick by brick, moment by moment. "What are you thinking about?" Nathan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "About how grateful I am," Eleanor replied. "For you, for our children, for this life we have created, for second chances and unexpected paths. And for the courage it took to walk down that unexpected path," Nathan added. "Do not discount your own bravery, Eleanor. You have overcome so much." "We have overcome it together," Eleanor corrected. "I could not have done any of it without you." They sat in comfortable silence as the night deepened around them, two souls who had found each other against all odds, who had built a love story not of dramatic gestures but of quiet moments and steady devotion. In the distance, a coyote howled, and Eleanor did not flinch. Inside the house, their children slept safely in their beds. Around them, the ranch breathed and settled, a living testament to all they had accomplished. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new opportunities to grow and love and build. But tonight, there was only this. Two hearts beating in tandem, two lives intertwined so completely that neither could imagine existence without the other, two people who had found in each other exactly what they needed to become their best selves. Eleanor leaned her head on Nathan's shoulder, feeling his arm come around her in that familiar protective gesture that no longer spoke of fear needing comfort, but simply of love choosing closeness. In the quiet darkness of the New Mexico night, with stars wheeling overhead and the ranch sleeping around them, Eleanor understood with perfect clarity that she was exactly where she was meant to be, with exactly the person she was meant to be with. And that was the greatest gift of all.